Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry, from winery owners like Mark Hansen of Bricoler Vineyards, who created a holistic plant-to-plate wine tasting experience for his winery visitors, to today's guest, Sara Moll, who's redefining what a virtual wine tasting experience can be. Today's episode, it's sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, if you're a business looking to retain a winery or a craft beverage producer as a client, Barrels Ahead will develop a plan to make it happen. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Rob Griswold and Stefan Martinez from Trisk Printing. On last week's show, we discussed the latest innovations in wine label printing. Check out this episode to learn how to level up your wine and craft labels from just a visual brand expression to a full tactile sensory experience. I am super excited to talk with today's guest, Sara Moll, and I want to thank Darren Fox from Idea Marketing for introducing us. Sara is the founder and CEO of Vin Social. She's a certified sommelier, certified specialist of wine, and WSET 3 certified. Sara's worked in multiple facets in the wine industry, from wholesale and retail sales to event production. And she created Vin Social with a mission of democratizing access to the wine lifestyle. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you so much, Drew. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. So, Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you. Well, I grew up in the Midwest, sort of a wine desert, if you will. Made my way to New York City after graduating college. My degree was in fashion design and fashion merchandising. So, of course, I had to go to New York City, the Big Apple. Had a decade-long career in the fashion industry on the creative side, working in the accessories space. Great career trajectory, lots of amazing opportunities. But as I got older and wiser and more world aware, I had a lot of ethical conflict with the fashion industry is the second most toxic and pollutive industry in the world. And I just had a lot of ethical grind, as I said. So I set out to figure out what the next chapter was going to look like. And the culinary arts had always captivated my heart. Living in New York, I was taking a bunch of culinary classes and wine classes wherever I could, just for fun, just to sort of feed my soul, my passion. And I decided, let's just see if I can make this a career. So fortunately, I had a very supportive husband who was like, sure, you can just leave your career and go to wine school. So I attended the International Culinary Center's professional program, which was incredible. It was really a remarkable, life-changing experience. Very intense, but learned the whole world of wine from all master somms of the world, and really got spit out the other side of the wine rabbit hole as certified sommelier. And Vin Social was sort of an idea, I would call an incubation form at that point. Just knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I wanted to create my own career path in wine. I was, 30-ish, didn't want to really work the floor as a sommelier. It wasn't going to really be a lifestyle fit at that point in my life. But I did end up jumping in and start working, for some amazing boutique retailers, really, just getting my feet wet in the industry, worked for a wholesale, wine importer, Italian wine importer, started working with trade organizations to do event programming, things like that. And it was sort of like drinking from the fire hose, just like so ravenous. How can I really understand all the different facets and the players in the space? Of course, New York is really like the playground for the wine community. And but Vin Social was really born sort of from a realization that there was a huge opportunity to reinvent what wine education looked like in a modern sense. My network was made up primarily of, not wine and hospitality people, right? They were sort of traditional business people. And I was now their sort of I always say the de facto wine guru of the network now. And so many people started
this was before Vin Social? So this was
like sort of in the evolution of when Vin Social was like coming into like, an idea. But really the spark was based on this prolific realization that so many folks are really truly interested in the subject of wine, but for some reason there's a widespread insecurity around the subject. People feel like you either have to have a certification or go to like some formal wine training to join the conversation, which is just completely ridiculous. And so Vince, that's what I started to do, just democratize access, make wine more inclusive, accessible, more friendly, more fun, like remove all the snobbery, remove all of the like BS that sort of makes people feel insecure around the subject, just meeting them where they are. And so my creative background came in real handy as I've sort of branded Vin Social, threw up my first Squarespace site, and started marketing to consumers and creating ticketed wine sales in New York City. I was always searching for cool venues, like partnering with restaurants or event venues where I could test my skills, if you will, teaching people about wine. And really over many years developed a core sort of proprietary approach to educating people around wine. And that is firmly rooted in narrative, really bringing the stories behind the bottles to life and drawing that connection to guests of the humble roots of wine, which is the source, right? It's the people, it's the farmers. As soon as you realize, or you meet a winemaker and you're having a tasting with them and you realize that they're wearing like mud-covered boots, they're not wearing a suit and tie and a label pin, a lapel pin.
The official Patagonia vest.
Yes, exactly. Or the t-shirt, the ripped t-shirt, like whatever. So that was really kind of how Vin Social started. It was really just more an idea and like the desire to deconstruct the way wine is, discovered by consumers.
Now, how long was this?
How long? Yeah,
so this is the early stages. This is right after you got your W set?
I graduated in 2014 from wine school, as we call it, quote wine school. And then Vin Social was really born almost prior to and during that period, but formally in 2015. And that was after, I started getting on the radar of companies. So companies started hiring me to do what I was doing, to create ways for them to
hear about these experiences. So the early days in New York, you're finding ticketed.
Oh man, there was one program we called Underground Wine Sessions. I was sort of managing and running events for this really cool boutique wine shop that was brand new in meatpacking. Unfortunately, they've gone out of business since, but very unique in that they had an underground cellar that was this beautiful sort of intimate tasting room. And so fortunately, being one of the only places in the city that could offer that, a lot of these winemakers are always coming through New York to meet their customers, right? So they're buyers, like the people that run the wine shops, right? And so I said, well, why don't we extend that to the consumers? The trade people always get access to the makers when they come into town through portfolio tastings and things like that. Well, why isn't there like a consumer night? Like, I feel like this would be, something that people would pay for to join. And so that's really where it started. So Underground Wine Sessions, when winemakers would come in town, we would put together a really intimate invite-only tasting or, advertise it out to our customer base and bring them in. I mean, I was able to, that's where I met some like Pepe Raventos of Raventos y Blanc. We hosted the founder and maker of Coast Winery in Sicily, some amazing producers from Napa and Oregon. And that was really just lit my fire for really wanting to extend that access much more widely, right? Yeah. Which is the end consumer very infrequently has the privilege, the access to the actual makers. And so that's been a differentiator for Vin Social since the beginning, where as much as possible, really connecting you to the source. And that's really where I think a lot of people have that aha moment of, except for if you go to the vineyard, in person, but like the next best thing is if you're going to meet the winemaker.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. So you started grassroots underground tastings in New York. And then the next step in Vin Social is you're broadening out to, what was the next step?
Corporate. Yeah. So then I started getting hired by companies who were looking for differentiated ways to entertain, wine and dine, if you will, their clients, their teams, their prospects. And that was really successful. And I did that for many, many years, while also sort of jumping into the tangle of figuring out how I could also become an e-commerce platform, and the nightmare that exists around figuring out the legal compliance, licensing, and all of those things. So that was a journey that began, I think, in 2017 when I was pregnant with my first child. Like, I got to scale this baby because I'm going to have a kid, and how am I going to keep doing this because I was a one-woman show? So that was the impetus to really think about, well, what does Vin Social look like at scale, and where does this go beyond just me teaching wine education, experiences?
Sure. Oh, that's amazing. What was the biggest challenge in figuring out the e-commerce platform? I'm always talking to wineries about that. And there's some solutions out there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I went through a bit of a legal education, really understanding the complexities of the regulatory system. That was the biggest and most time-consuming. It was quite an investment too. I spent lots of dollars on lawyers figuring it out, and really just figuring out, how do we set Vin Social up to do this? Do we become a retailer? Do we get fully licensed, or do we operate as a third-party marketplace? And after lots of, advice and legal fees, we ultimately decided that our best to do what we do best is really to be a third-party marketplace and partner with the sellers and figure out how to do the fulfillment and the logistics and the compliance sort of, behind the scenes.
That's great advice, to figure out exactly what role you want to do, because you can't do it all. So.
Exactly. And, we knew that we wanted to be on the engagement, the experiential side. We are very brand minded. My background's in creative. So that's, it's really kind of what we set out to do. And I'm just so grateful that we persevered to figure all of that out. So we were able to launch our e-commerce shop, was the V1 of vinsocial.co, as e-commerce was just a beta test in New York State as a quarterly wine club subscription. So it was, the idea is taking what we do from an experiential standpoint and merging it with the typical version of a wine club, where you receive some regular interval of curated wines. But on top of that, it was then getting access to educational experiences like video content, things to really reinforce and bring to life those bottles that you've just received. And that was, growing small and organically. We were considering, scaling nationally. What happened in 2020? Oh
yeah.
You want to remember what happened?
So you're actually setting yourself up for success pre-COVID.
I was, little did I know. But when COVID came roaring in like a bat out of hell, right? We were perfectly positioned to just pivot and go 100% virtual, because I now had all of the infrastructure and partners in place to do national product fulfillment. We can now ship wine to 45 states, which is just a huge, like I said, hurdle to overcome.
Oh, absolutely.
But that positioned us perfectly to be able to navigate this virtual world, where we are now creating virtual versions of Vin Socials, but now we can fulfill the product to anybody, anywhere, so that anyone that joins a Vin Social has the same product in their hands, which to me is the big differentiator, right? Like, you can throw up a Zoom and have a happy hour, but this is about building intimacy through a shared experience and exploring through a sensory experience together.
Oh, that's amazing. What so you call it joining a Vin Social. So is it Vin Social's the new term for the location, or is it a group? You call it like joining a Vin Social.
Yeah, I mean, it's a noun. It's a noun. It's a verb. Really, that's the goal. Is that, and I've said from the beginning, it's not a wine tasting. It's a Vin Social. It's very different. Very highly designed, very interactive. Like I said, we've built a lot of proprietary educational tools and image, collateral and things that are very visually stimulating and simple and fun.
Walk me through one of those experiences.
Okay, so I'll show you. I know your viewers can't see, but this is one of our really most incredible tools.
I like it.
Love. So we call it the Vin Social color chart. And this was actually an idea that was born when I was in wine school. So when you're learning to taste and describe wine, right? I thought it was so difficult in the beginning to just pull things out of thin air. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me of something. What is that thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my mentors, who's a master sommelier, Christopher Bates, amazing guy from upstate New York, he drew this connection for the color of wine. Like, what is the actual color of the liquid in your glass,
Mm-hmm.
and what aromas and flavors might you also experience in the glass? So like, if you're looking at a wine that's really like deep purple, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, what things are deep purple? Like plums, dark berries, violets, maybe. And so that is why I was like, this made so much sense to me as a visual person, a creative person. So we put together sort of our edited or our attempt to put the most common aromas and flavors that you find in wine into one little place, and it's organized by color.
I like the simplicity of that. It looks very easy to grasp.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's one of those things that, we send with every package so that people can keep it. You can put it on your fridge or whatever. Anytime you're tasting wine, it's a great conversation starter. And it's simple to understand. You're like, oh, okay, my wine is ruby red.
Mm-hmm.
There's strawberries, there's cranberries.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. So it starts off, this virtual experience. So it starts off with a tasting card. Do you ship the wines to each one of the people that's participating in the tasting?
Absolutely. That is obviously in our minds mission critical. So we have most of our business is working with companies now. So companies are hiring us. We work with incredible companies like Salesforce and Amazon Web Services and Verizon and the Fortune 1000. And we help them enable their sales initiatives. So essentially, I always say business is done on the bar stool. It's not done in the boardroom. And there's a very important reason why corporate America spends so much money on entertainment and gifting, because that's where, relationships are born and, sales and deals happen. So when, the traditional hospitality world collapsed in 2020, there was a massive vacuum, right? So every company, every event planner, field marketer, sales team is like, oh my gosh, how do we keep in close contact with our clients that we normally are entertaining? We're taking out to dinners or bringing to events. And so that's where we really stepped in as a turnkey, very premium solution for them, where we can deliver everything from event production, event design, graphic design, program development. We have the experts to run the technology. So we operate and run multiple virtual venues, as I call them. And then, of course, the most difficult component for any client they could not do themselves is get the product to everybody, the same product to everybody nationally. So for us, we are sort of like this holistic end-to-end solution for these clients. And yes, so to answer, long story short, yes, everybody must receive the same box, the same event kit, as we call it, which has either wine. We've also do craft spirits and cocktails. And getting the right box from the right client to the right guest at the right time is the biggest problem we solve for our clients, beyond all the awesome other stuff like the production and the experience design stuff.
That from fulfillment, that's a tremendous help. Now, what size are some of these events? What was the largest one that you've done?
Yeah, it really ranges. I would say most typically there's somewhere between 30 to 60 guests. Oh, wow. Right? Because we've done events up to like 300 people and as small as say 5. But for a client that wants to invest in this, right, they want to make sure there's enough people to make it worth their while, but not too many people that they can't actually, interact with all of them, because that's the real idea. We provide, I say, the warm up and the wine up. Warm them up, we wine them up, and then we break them out. We help our clients orchestrate face-to-face engagement through breakout rooms and sessions that are, designed with their clients, so that, say, a sales account exec can be matched with his or her clients in a breakout room, so they can actually talk business, whatever, just converse and build rapport with one another.
Well, that's phenomenal. So like in the midst of the wine tasting, you might have present a wine A, and then breakout sessions to discuss wine A, and then that's what a great way. How long do these experiences usually last?
It depends. So we have a 30-minute format, a 45-minute format, and a 60-minute format. And we also have 2 different approaches. So we have an approach for the client who doesn't need all the tech support. They maybe already have invested in their own virtual event platform.
Okay.
So we just provide the talent. So what the wine event, we have a Vin Social sommeliers who've been trained in our program and vetted for being excellent on-camera storytellers and hosts. And then we also do the product fulfillment. But we also have a high touch, we call bespoke program, where it's for the client that literally is like, I just want you to do everything. And so we will do all the event production. We'll produce the event on one of our tech platforms, provide the talent, of course, run the show, and do all the product fulfillment. So we really can fit whatever needs our clients have, whatever budget they have. And we are really helping them design the experience for their audience. Because if it's an internal audience, we might want a different type of experience. It's more fun with trivia and games and competition. If it's client facing, it needs to be a little bit more buttoned up. Maybe there's the sales presentation. So we do all of that in-house, which is, I think, what makes us really special and unique among other sort of pseudo competitors out there.
What a valuable service. And I know business has boomed over the last year.
Yes, to say the least. I always say we built the airplane while flying it through the storm of COVID.
I like that phrase. And you're currently, and I wanted to kind of step back from Vin Social and actually figure out, you're currently seeking funds and doing a venture campaign.
We are, yeah. So we are fundraising. We're raising capital to further grow and scale Vin Social, bring on additional team members. We're also looking at the ability to invest in some proprietary technology, some tech-enabled automation that is going to allow us to deliver exponentially more events for more clients with a really small, finely tuned team. And also building out our pipeline of suppliers. So we work and partner exclusively with craft brands in wine and spirit. So these are, independent businesses. And right now, because we have the liberty to be very selective, we're only working with brands that have either women or BIPOC individuals in their leadership teams. Because as a woman in this industry, and an industry that is behind the times in terms of diversity and inclusivity, it's really important that we're prioritizing that. So that is, we're looking for more brands that fit that makeup to bring into our programs. So we build out for every, winery or distillery that we partner with, we build out a program that's sort of an enduring, ongoing program that we, sell to our clients and produce.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a great initiative.
Thank you.
Man. Back to that on that funding, kind of got me. I was actually I actually want to talk about this more. I had no idea you had such a good diversity event. So all of your wines in your club and on your events are women-owned winemakers, or
for the B2B
vineyards?
programs. Yeah, for the quarterly club subscription, we go every quarter to a different region in the world of wine, and some regions are harder than others to find diversity. I'm going to be honest with you. So for the B2B program, which is really where where the volume of product is going out the doors through these B2B programs, that's where we can really add a lot of impact to our supplier partners, because they're seeing, we do serve them as a net new and alternative sales and marketing channel. So, if they're thinking, oh my gosh, especially during COVID, their tasting room's closed, right? That in a lot of small brands, that is a significant portion of their annual sales. So it was really helpful and validating for us to be able to step in and be like, hey, let us help you move some product through online and virtually. And also, our brand partners would have told us this as well. It's like value to them is that they're now getting in front of new audiences. They're getting much wider exposure. And we're making them look good and sound good, right? So we invest heavily on the upfront when we're building a program around a brand to make sure we have really beautiful, high quality content. We sort of train them in pulling out and delivering their narrative in a really compelling way. And make sure they're ready for stage, essentially.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. Do you work with wineries directly, helping them with their virtual tastings?
We do, actually, and it's happening more and more as sort of the world is opening back up and their attention is being turned back to, oh my gosh, I got to get my tasting room back open and deal with my, physical guests. A few of our partners are actually starting to outsource their virtual events sort of inbound to us because they'll admit it's not their core competency. They got into it during COVID because it was a survival mechanism and as a way to stay in contact with their, club members and customers. And a lot of them got inbound interest from corporate as well, because literally every company out there was like, we got to do a virtual wine tasting. So we can help them as well with that as sort of a white label or partnership solution.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because these virtual tastings, I mean, they're not going away, especially in the wine clubs, because people will visit Napa maybe once, taste the wines, join the club, but there's very little ways. They may live on the East Coast and not be able to visit every year. And the virtual tasting is one of the only ways to like keep these club members engaged and part of the story.
That's what I mean. The beauty, the silver lining of all of this that we've all just lived through, right, is that it forced us to realize these alternative ways to connect and stay engaged with our customers and our audiences in a way that is actually really fulfilling and rewarding and impactful. And in a way, it's democratized access to all kinds of things, knowledge, experts, whatever it may be. And for the wine industry, it's such a huge step forward in delivering on inclusivity because not everybody has the means to fly to Napa and visit the winery and the tasting room, but they may have the means to order 2 bottles a quarter and join a virtual experience. So I think it's just a great way for the wine industry to really get in front of more people and build some real, honest connection.
Absolutely. What advice? So a winery wanting to bootstrap this, what advice would you give them they may be a little late in the game setting up the virtual tastings, what advice would you give them to bootstrap something?
Yeah, I mean, Zoom is a great tool, right? We utilize Zoom for some of our programming. We also use some other, more higher touch, event specific platforms, but it's all about the storytelling. It's about being really prepared with a concise delivery of your story and a tasting. I would say, keep it under 60 minutes. I've joined a few that I didn't produce that have gone on for 2 hours. It's like, it's too much.
I've been a member of those.
Too much for anyone. The attention span is limited. So keep it really short and tight. And don't try to taste like 6 wines on a virtual tasting. Like we do 2. We do 2 in 40, 30, 45, or 60 minutes. No matter how long it is, we do 2 wines. And that is plentiful because that allows for a lot of time for questions and answers and to really let an organic conversation happen with the people in the room.
That is great advice. No, I've been to a few where I think one we went through 8 wines. It was with the winemaker. About the 4th.
Nobody's going to remember anything about the 5, 6, 7, 8. So
it was fun, but man, there was a lot of wines. And
for small wineries too, like it's a reason to keep people coming back for multiple experiences. Because let's say you have 10 different wines in your lineup. Split it up into 5 events of 2, you might get repeat people, and then they're actually going to remember those 2 wines. You can go deeper. We always just do like a contrast dynamic. So like 1 white, 1 red, 1 rosé, 1 red, like something like that. Cause then you kind of please everybody.
That's fantastic. Cause a lot of those virtual tastings started as just mimicking what happens in the in-person tasting room. When you're present, you can actually kind of go through 6 wines. But online, that is a huge tip.
Yeah.
On craft, and I want to go. You mentioned that you do craft beverages and even cocktails. How do you do you send out the cocktails pre-mixed, or do you send the ingredients and everybody gets to mix their own?
Yeah, so we partnered with a couple different companies, woman-led, of course, Cheeky Cocktails and Perfectly Cordial. They both do incredible high-quality ingredient, like fresh juice mixes, which is awesome because they can be used to make a mocktail if you're a non-drinker, or it's an easy like 1-to-1 mix with whatever spirit. So that's what we do with our cocktail kits. With the spirit specifically, we work with the distilleries to bottle small formats so that you're not delivering like 2 750 mLs of booze. It's a lot, right? It's one thing to maybe drink 2 full-size bottles of wine. It's another to drink 2 full-size bottles of whiskey. So our spirits and mixology kits are a little bit different than the wine. With the wine, we always send 2 full-size 750 mLs with educational materials and any swag and things that the client wants to include, like wine openers or glassware or whatever.
Oh, that's fantastic. What would you say the mix is of your corporate clients between wine, spirits, and cocktails?
So it's about 50-50 between spirits and wine, which is exciting. So we launched our spirits program in late December for a client who is a very important client. You may have heard of Salesforce, right? So we'll build it for you, Salesforce. So we put together our first whiskey program in partnership with Milam and Green, which is an amazing, if you guys don't know about them, woman-led distillery out of Texas. Together, collectively, the team has more experience than any other whiskey brand in the country. And so that ignited our sort of endeavor into the spirits world, even though, I'm as a sommelier, I love spirits, but wasn't part of my business model at the time. But we really realized that our clients were so ravenous for the spirits as well. And it's for us been great because now the more programs we add, the more events they want to do. So that's why we just keep building new programs, bringing new brands as fast as we can, because as fast as we can bring it in, fast as we can sell it.
Sure. For a client, when they're deciding between a spirit or a wine, is there certain advice that you give for them? Like, oh no, you guys need to do a wine tasting, or you should really be doing craft cocktails at this.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I think a lot of times, we have clients that most of our clients are doing multiple events. And so for them, it's an opportunity to just layer in diversity to get different people in the door, right? So not everybody likes wine, not everybody likes whiskey. So it's really usually they're the ones that are kind of coming to us like, hey, we want to do this. We have a nice menu that we send to our clients so they can kind of choose, what program do you want to do? But we also we give our input, like if they have an idea of kind of like the demographic of their audience, we'll say, well, we think your audience would love whiskey or we think your audience would love wine. But typically the client's pretty clear on exactly what they want.
All right. Have you moved into craft beer at all?
Not yet, although I'm a huge beer lover. In fact, I live in Colorado now. I live in Fort Collins, which is the Napa Valley of craft beer. So I have huge ambitions. I hope to bring beer into the mix. We haven't yet. I actually own hopsocial.com as well. So there's an expansion opportunity there into craft beer, which would be obviously in the next sort of obvious extension for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. So always about gratitude here. And you mentioned women-owned businesses, empowering, really increasing diversity. Who do you admire most right now in the wine industry and the work that they're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to give a huge shout out. There's been so many amazing organizations, obviously, that have popped up through COVID to really address, the Black Lives Matter movement and, the misalignment with diversity and equity and inclusion in this industry. And the Roots Fund is amazing. I've been, Akimi, I'll give her a shout out. She's an amazing woman who's really, I think, really the engine behind this fund. And what they do is it's a fund to really create opportunities for the BIPOC community to get into the wine industry through scholarships and work opportunities. And, I think in order for this industry to really, move into full-blown inclusion, we've got to empower those and get more people of color into the industry by giving them opportunities and showing them how to even work in this industry. So I think that what the work they're doing is amazing. So huge shout out to Roots Fund.
Well, that's great. I'm gonna have to check them out. I'm not as familiar as I need to be on that. So Sara, where can people find more about you and learn about Vin Social?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is the best place to go. It's vinsocial.co.co. So from our main landing page, if you're interested in learning more about the corporate events, you can go there, or more interested in learning about our quarterly, consumer-facing wine club subscription. Also, as we sort of mentioned and just got busy talking, we are raising capital, and we are raising it through regulation crowdfunding, which means that through wefunder.com, which is a platform we're raising capital on, anybody can invest in Vin Social as little as $100 for an actual stake of ownership in the company. It's a really exciting sort of new movement that's happening out there in the fundraising world. So for anybody also listening who is an aspiring entrepreneur or a small business seeking funding, I encourage you to investigate equity crowdfunding. It's different than like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and all those things of yesteryear. It's actually a legitimate way to raise equity capital.
Oh, that's amazing.
And for underrepresented founders like women who only get 2% of venture capital dollars, it's a really empowering way to sort of take matters into your own hand and raise capital from a really wide community of your own community, your own friends and family, as well as sort of the wider community that's supporting equity crowdfunding out there.
That's amazing. I wish I had that about 10 years ago when I was
I know, right? It's been quite a journey. So anybody also, I just will say, I'm really, really accessible. So anyone that's listening that would want advice on equity crowdfunding or getting into the wine industry, whatever, just connect with me on LinkedIn.
Oh, that sounds great. So everyone, we've been talking with Sara Moll from Vin Social. You know where to find her. And if you need help with your equity crowdfunding, hit her up on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you so much, Drew. It was such a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.